Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the 2015 Bridgewater's Finest Movie Awards, presented in conjunction with MediaDetour.com. As you can see, Tyler has swapped beverages to the G-Raid, the Gatorade. He's got to get those electrolytes in him to keep him going. And this is, video number 2 in our top 30 best movies of 2015. This is going to chronicle movies number 20 all the way up to number 11. And as we did in the last video, to determine who starts it off, a good old-fashioned game of rock, paper, scissors.
All right.
Rock, paper, scissors.
Yay.
Oh, Tyler gets to go first this time.
Yay, I win.
Hit us off with your number 20.
My number 20 is The Gift.
Something that was in my honorable mentions.
Which was in something that we did earlier for me, too. I think it was maybe I Can't Believe I Love.
Yeah, it was either that or I expected less.
Just a solid movie with some nice twists here and there, and a good performances.
And a great performances in multiple areas from Joel Edgerton, because you said, he has to direct himself, and that's a fairly difficult thing to do.
Just a very surprising movie, ultimately. It's tense and...
Yeah. It was one that I remembered not liking quite as much as you did. It hit you better than it hit me. Joel Edgerton, in terms of that movie, I could even qualify him as kind of a genius, because, he gets that movie off really well, and he gets a great performance out of himself.
Yes, I agree.
Anything else you'd like to add on your number 20?
Nah.
Kind of stealing your spotlight.
You kind of know where it's going,
yeah,
because it's obvious there's something more menacing at play here.
Right.
But you don't quite know exactly what he's going to do.
No, and it's an interesting role it's Jason Bateman, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting role for him. He's actually, it's kind of weird to say this, I guess, but Jason Bateman's actually kind of a dynamic artist. Jason Bateman writes kids' books? But yeah, if you missed The Gift, you should even somebody like me that didn't like it as much as this guy, you should definitely see it. My number 20 best movie of 2015 is 007 Spectre. Now, the first thing that I should say about Spectre is, in terms of the Daniel Craig Bond movies, I put it at a solid number 3. Because it doesn't sniff Casino Royale's jockstrap.
No, it sure doesn't.
Not even close. Casino Royale is one of my favorite movies, I think, of all time. But there's certain things that Spectre does better than Skyfall, and there's certain things that Skyfall does better than Spectre. The most Bond that Craig has ever felt as Bond, to me, was in this movie, because he was more detached, I would say, less emotional, led with his dick a little bit more, and that's usually kind of what we think of a Bond, is hump first, ask questions later. I think this might have been the first Daniel Craig Bond movie where he has sex with more than one woman. And, spoilers, it all works out in the end, and Bond gets the girl, and they drive away together. Lea Seydoux is an excellent Bond girl. She's a little ineffectual, gets to a point in the movie where she's just kind of there. And that's for the majority of the movie after that point. Up to a certain point, she's great. She's not Vesper Lynd. I thought that Vesper Lynd is probably the best Bond girl I've ever seen. But she's really good, and she's gorgeous, and I really like Lea Seydoux. And this is probably, it seems anyways, this is the end of Daniel Craig's run as James Bond. If it is, then he's left a legacy with 3 pretty good Bond movies and Quantum of Solace. I would really, really, really like to see Idris Elba be the next Bond. At a rating of 80 out of 100, 007 Spectre is my number 20 best movie of 2015.
I like Spectre. enough, but it left me a little cold.
Did it?
Yeah, like we said earlier, it's kind of a year of spy movies, and in terms of spy movies, it's one of the worst.
You'd have thought that in a year of spy movies, Bond would be the spy movie, and it definitely wasn't.
He's getting a little tired as Bond, so I hope it's the end. I really like him as Bond, but the whole formula, the whole thing is getting a little tiresome at this point.
Yeah, you're right.
But I will say, though, that, like, I still love Casino Royale, and Skyfall was really good. I like Quantum of Solace, it's alright.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say, though, that the beginning of this one was excellent, with the Day of the Dead stuff going on.
Yes.
That was an excellent beginning.
That whole sequence is really good.
Yeah, that was excellent, but then after that, it was just kind of like an average.
And it's sad, because, like, you follow that up with, like, the helicopter sequence, which something about it didn't work as well for me as it should have, maybe.
So my number 19 is AntMan, which you mentioned earlier.
I did.
I'm trying to think of the points that I was going to make. Okay, then I guess the main point I was going to make, because we already talked about it a bunch, was that I think in terms of, like, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, this has some of the most inspired fight scenes.
Yeah.
Because they really managed to use the small, big dynamic really well. I really was impressed by the choreography and just the way they did that. They used it really well, and it was a funny movie. And there's another part from the trailer, but it's like when he's talking to Douglas and he's like, "My days of breaking in and stealing stuff is over. Right. What do you want me to do? I want you to break in the house and steal some stuff." And it's just like,
hey.
And Paul Rudd, like, he plays it so well.
Yeah,
his reaction and stuff. So Ant-Man ended up being a very good MCU movie about a character that's probably one of the least favorite of the ones they have planned. I mean, they have some coming up that average people, and including myself in terms of some of them, don't really care about, like Doctor Strange, which I mentioned earlier. Like, that's going to be an interesting movie, but not a lot of people are invested in them unless they're, like, comic fans and whatnot.
Yeah, that's true.
But that would be an interesting one. But anyway, this ain't about that. It was a small movie with a big heart.
My number 19 best movie of 2015 is a movie that we talked about earlier, Focus, with Will Smith and Margot Robbie. I won't say too much more about it because I think we mentioned it multiple times so far in the videos. Like I said, it's a movie that's much better the less seriously you take it. Like, it's just kind of fun, and it's just kind of meant to be fun. And the fun comes both in the storyline and the chemistry between Will Smith and Margot Robbie, who both had pretty good years this year. One thing I did want to mention, though, because I don't think I mentioned this when we talked about it earlier, there's a couple of sex scenes in the movie between Smith and Robbie. Like, there's one kind of primary one. Yeah. And what I liked about the way that they did the sex scenes, in particular, because I paid close attention to them, because it's Margot Robbie and Will Smith, and he's pretty. The way that they choreographed them and the way that they filmed them was in a way that not a ton of movies, especially kind of mainstream movies, do anymore, which is a show less and suggest more kind of thing. I think it would have gotten a little probably gratuitous in context of the movie if they'd have gone too much longer on it. So good job on the sex scenes, Focus. But at a rating of 80 out of 100, Focus is my number 19 best movie of 2015.
Most movie sex scenes don't do it for me. Let's see. My number 18 is a movie called The Lobster. I don't normally say the premise when we're talking about this. That's always his thing, where he talks about that shit. But I'm going to do it this time because it's kind of...
Because I bet you 2 people that will watch these videos have seen The Lobster.
It's this dystopian movie where you have to, like, they put you in, I think it's called The Hotel, and you have to find, like, love in a relationship in 45 days, which is, like, an interesting idea in itself. But what really got me was, and if you don't find a relationship in 45 days, they release you into the woods, and they turn you into a beast. And I thought, That's interesting. I'm gonna watch that. And it has like Colin Farrell and Rachel Weisz?
Yep.
Weisz.
Vice, I think.
Weisz?
Yeah, I think so.
Those two are like the main two that meet each other.
Okay.
It's a very odd movie. It's excellent satire though, and like what it kind of, the acting in it is like purposely very robotic and stuff like that, and it's very different. One of the better dystopian movies I think I've ever seen.
Okay. I didn't see The Lobster, but it sounds interesting.
Yeah.
My number 18 best movie of 2015 is Black Mass, starring Johnny Depp. The story of crime boss turned FBI informant, but still kind of crime boss, Whitey Bulger. A lot of people were calling Depp's performance as Whitey Bulger in this movie kind of like, oh, this is revolutionary, and this is like the best performance of his career. I don't think I'd go that far. He was good. He played this character very well, and he had to kind of transform a little bit in order to play this character. And I do legitimately think Johnny Depp is one of our greatest living actors. I don't think he always picks roles that reflect that.
But I think he picks like two roles. I think it's oddball, and whether that's pirate oddball or like detective oddball,
right,
or Hunter S. Thompson oddball, which he was fantastic as Hunter S. Thompson.
Yeah, totally.
He's either oddball or gangster.
Yeah. It seems like there's not a ton in between, but like Depp's one of those actors where whatever he's in, he can kind of like he sells it, right? Yeah. But in any case, it's just one of those entertaining movies, and it's like now that I kind of look at my list, there's a lot of stuff here on my list where it's like I can describe this as just gonna have fun with it and shut your brain off and do whatever. And this is kind of another one of those ones where you just kind of enjoy like kind of the gangster element to it and stuff like that. And like this hit me on the gangster level more so than Legend did, which I thought was I would have bet anything that it would have been the other way around. And who'd have thought
me,
Dakota Johnson, could deliver when you don't cast her as a boring female protagonist getting boinked by the least interesting man in the world. The movie's certainly not perfect. It kind of whitewashes some intra-FBI elements, like while they're like working with Whitey Bulger while at the same time kind of trying to hunt him down and things like that. Like it whitewashes a lot of elements, and I don't know if that's intentional or just lazy writing or what it was. So it's like the movie's certainly not perfect, but Depp's good in it, Dakota Johnson's good in it. It's entertaining enough. At a rating of 80 out of 100, Black Mass is my number 18 best movie of 2015.
I think I rated it an 80, but I think I'd probably knock it down to 70 or 75. I think I was just like, I rate things when I just come out usually, and I'm a little higher on movies. And in time,
yeah, me too.
Black Mass has become a little less to me, but I still enjoy it. I like Legend a little more. My number 17 is The Night Before, which we've talked about a couple times now, yeah. I think. What can I say that we haven't said? It's funny and there's some heart to it, and I like the three main characters together. I like their chemistry. All this is stuff we've said.
It is.
But in case you haven't seen...
And we like Seth Rogen.
Yeah, we like Seth Rogen. He's fun on drugs. So yeah, The Night Before. Good Christmas movie.
Exactly. Christmas movie for the 21st century. Right on. My number 17 best movie of 2015 is The Martian, starring Matt Damon. The Martian. Matt Damon plays a Mars astronaut, Mark Watney. This is, of course, a fiction, because we haven't made it to Mars yet.
I have.
So, except for Tyler. He's been there. It's really red. It's the first, one of the first, or the first, manned expeditions to Mars. Mark Watney's one of the astronauts. He gets caught up in a freak sandstorm and is presumed dead. It's one of those movies that, like, I'm watching it and I'm like, this is, like, big, and some of it's really pretty, but it's just like, the whole movie feels big and big and big and big. It's not to the point that it's bombastic, but I do kind of feel like it's big without necessarily a lot of oomph behind it. Like, it's kind of big and pretty, but it doesn't necessarily have the substance behind it to make it great. Some stuff kind of started to feel a little bit inconsequential. Like, I don't necessarily know what this movie adds to the conversation of like sci-fi movies or space travel movies or even interpersonal dramas. Like, I don't feel like this adds much of anything to any of those conversations. It's a long story. The story takes place over close to 3 years. I think it's like 900 some days in total or whatever. So it takes place over a long period of time. It takes an adequate amount of time. Some things kind of feel rushed and aren't given quite enough time to breathe. But I like Damon's performances as Mark Watney. I like Jessica Chastain. I like a number of people that are in the movie. So at a rating of 80 out of 100, The Martian is my number 17 best movie of 2015.
I'm a contrarian on this one.
Yeah,
pretty heavily. I don't hate the movie.
Mm-hmm.
I find it very, mediocre. I find it very mediocre.
Okay.
Because, like, I appreciate the science of it, and that's, like, a nice touch to me. Like, cause it's relatively interesting science. But, like, I felt, and then some of the jokes were funny. I'm not going to sit here and say I didn't laugh at some of the jokes.
Mm-hmm.
And Matt Damon is relatively charming, like Matt Damon generally is.
Mm-hmm.
But some of the jokes were also really forced, and I just thought, no, this is too much. You got this talented cast,
Yeah.
but there's no chemistry with them at all. It's like, and they're good actors individually, but I felt nothing between them. Yeah, the Martian was just kind of completely like the definition of mediocre to me.
Fair enough.
So. My turn now.
It is your turn. Number 16, I believe.
A tink, therefore I am picking Trainwreck.
Trainwreck's kind of high there, but I know you were higher on it even than I
I
was.
found it funny.
Yeah.
And I found Amy Schumer's performance quite good, to the point that she was on my Best Actress list
There you
this
go.
year. I don't know if it was an honerable mention or what.
I feel like it was an
remember.
honorable.
I think it might have been an honorable.
If you need me, I'll be the closest person on Grindr.
And John Cena was on point. It's not even like a small character. Like, he was fairly important.
Yeah, fairly important to the first half of the movie, for sure.
It's one of the better movies Judd Apatow has directed. I know he didn't have a lot to do with the writing for this one, I don't think. I think this was purely a director thing for him. And this was like one of my favorites that he's like been a part of anyway, whether it's producing or directing. Because I think he only produced Superbad or Knocked Up or one of them. I can't remember. Doesn't matter. He was involved in some way.
Yeah.
It worked. It had some heart.
Yeah.
I was interested in Amy Schumer's character.
Yeah, and I was invested in their weirdo relationship.
Yeah, he was good at it.
You know what?
too.
I'm coming around on it. I think I need to give that a second watch.
Yeah, like I said in the, I don't know, whatever video it was, it works in blocks where like one block is just amazing, and then it kind of dies down a little bit, which is why it doesn't hit a 90. Like, I love 21 Jump Street, because 21 Jump Street never stops making me laugh.
Right.
And so it's not like on the level of that, or like the better comedies like Super Troopers and South Park and Team America and whatever other comedies, Clerks, they really like. This does have some moments where it's kind of whatever, just kind of putters along.
Right, fair enough.
But it brings itself back up.
You know what I do with assholes? I lick them.
That's like the best sex scene ever.
You know what? I'm changing my vote for Best Actor. John Cena, honorable mention. That was good. Now you're turning organically. You're turning me around.
I like Trainwreck quite a bit.
There you go.
Really solid 85.
Nice. My number 16 best movie of 2015 is The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2.
Yeah.
Caps off the Hunger Games series, which, as we mentioned, this guy is probably a bit of a bigger fan of than I am. I really like this series. Like, Catching Fire was a tremendous, tremendous movie. I wasn't necessarily the hugest fan of the way they kind of Hollywooded out the ending.
No, the ending was terrible.
So, I was like, it could have ended. It was like Lord of the Rings. Like, it should have ended at the logical closure point, not the 17 endings that followed.
Yeah, can we spoil?
I think we can spoil at this point. It's out on DVD, I think.
Okay, so, like, So when Katniss and what's his face,
PETA.
They're like, she's in bed, or no, he's in bed.
Yeah.
And she comes in, and she's like, who asked the question? Is it him asking her, or her asking him?
I think
like,
he asked her.
Me?
Yeah.
Is that
you love me, real or not?
Real or not? And then
she's like, real.
There's your ending.
Yeah.
Right there. That's
Done.
it.
Absolutely.
That's all you needed, and it would have been like, oh, what a good love story, sort of. I mean,
but then they go so far as to go, 10 years in the future.
They have kids.
They have kids now.
And she's given the work. And I love Jennifer Lawrence. She was my best actress this year. But she's got this shit-eating grin. She's like holding her child.
Now, granted, she has kind of this really poignant moment where she's like talking to the baby, even though the baby obviously can't understand her, but it's like, did you have a nightmare? I still have them too. And the kind of which is kind of a little bit of a poignant moment. Still not necessary.
Nah, I find that whole scene just dreadful.
It's been an excellent dissection of the propaganda process.
Yeah,
I love the fact,
especially with Mockingjay 1.
Yeah, like it's just the fact that like the whole series is like propaganda is almost a character.
Yeah.
In and of itself, which is great. And also, I really like the way that the whole series has used color.
Yep.
Or lack thereof, to convey tone. At a rating of 80 out of 100, Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2 is my number 16 best movie of 2015.
My number, what was it?
15.
15 is Mission Impossible Rogue Nation.
Okay.
I don't really have anything to add because we talked about it in the previous video.
Mm-hmm.
But in case you haven't watched that, thrilling, has some really cool stunts that Tom Cruise did himself.
Yeah.
And
the stunt work is really
good. It's funny. There's some good comic relief, and just it's pretty much what an action like spy movie should be. The only thing we didn't mention last time we talked about it was that the theme song's amazing.
Yeah,
Pound for pound, one of the greatest themes ever.
It's true. It's
such a good theme. And Mission Impossible is really on a good streak here for me.
Seems like they're in a good place.
Yeah, even though they're changing directors every time. There's another interesting thing about Mission Impossible. It changes directors every time.
Yeah.
But it was someone different. And it's just interesting because they all bring like their unique flair.
Right.
Although this one is a lot closer to the last one than ever before. Like they've kind of kept a similar tone.
And speaking of spy movies, my number 15 best movie of 2015 is The Man from U.N.C.L.E. I do kind of wish in The Man from U.N.C.L.E. that they had explored the torturer character a little bit more. They kind of just sort of make him comic relief, and I felt like he could have been kind of like the darker, kind of maybe brought a little more edge to the movie that was, really fun up to that point. But I had kind of hoped that maybe you could get a little more grit and we could explore that character a little bit more. Unfortunately, we can't because they just kill him off. But the cast is really solid. This should be a franchise maker of a movie. Like, they should be able to not spit out sequels, but they should be able to sequelize this for the quality that it was. And I don't know whether I mentioned it when we talked about it before, but I loved the soundtrack from this movie too. There's another one like The Duff. Like, I'd have to actually go back and find specific songs from the soundtrack as to be like, oh yeah, that one. But I remember leaving the movie and saying, wow, I love the soundtrack. I love the music in that movie. So at a rating of 80 out of 100, The Man from U.N.C.L.E. is my number 15 best movie of 2015.
My number 14 is a pretty hated movie, judging from Rotten Tomatoes.
Excellent.
Really, otherwise nobody talks to me about this at all. Actually, it's funny because like on the internet, I get a certain impression of things, and then nobody ever talks about it in my real life. But anyway, my number 14 is Chappie.
Okay.
Chappie was actually higher on my list, but as time has gone on, I've realized I like it a little less than I thought I did.
Okay.
But I still really liked it, and I'm not really seeing the issues that people have. This is more about like social conditioning and raising children.
And baby robot carjackings.
Yeah, baby robot carjacking. And it's feels more personal almost.
Sloppy little Daddy's car.
Some of the tonal shifts don't do it for me. Like there's some points where it really kind of leans into comedy and it feels weird to me.
Yeah, fair enough. Isn't it OG Robot Gangster #1 or
Yeah.
something like that? Like just
And just him always going. I don't know. Like I liked it. It had some humor. Some of it was very forced, though, and I can admit to that. But then it had some really crushing, heartbreaking scenes.
Yeah, and I think the Chappie character is like, I think 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, we're still gonna remember the Chappie character, even if there's nothing else made.
Yeah.
From the IP, I think it is an emotionally gripping character and an investment worthy character in and of itself, because it's basically a child.
But it got crapped on so bad, and I never really read why. But so many people disliked it, and yet I thought it was a very effective science fiction movie.
It's been a weird year in that sense, because there's a lot of movies that, and I think this probably applies for both of us, there's a lot of movies that we liked that some people just did not.
Named Chappie. And he's so cute.
He is. He's adorable with his ears.
Yeah, he's
and
so
the
cute.
reject sticker across his forehead, which I think is amazing.
Yeah, I got no serious issues with Chappie.
No. My number 14 best movie of 2015 is one that we talked about earlier. It is Creed. Exactly. Michael B. Jordan, Sylvester Stallone. I don't have a ton to add against the rest of it. Like I say, I made the cardinal mistake of comparing it to Rocky Balboa, which I actually think is the best of the Rocky series, and that's not a good thing to do. That being said, Creed's not that movie. Creed doesn't have to be that movie. There was one thing about Creed. For some reason, it felt off to me in terms of it being a movie in the Rocky franchise, even though it's a spinoff. It felt like tonally, or like with its timing, like it felt rushed in some places. Because like one of the trademarks to me of that series of movies is like things that happen are given the time that they need to, like, they're given the time to breathe, and they're kind of given the time to like sort of have their own spotlight and be emotionally evocative. And I think in a lot of places in Creed, I remember it being like, okay, that like things happen, but they're not necessarily given that same time. So I don't know if that's an intentional kind of thing, or that's just another instance of me doing what I shouldn't be doing and comparing this to the other movies. But I mean, like, the performances were fantastic. The production values were fantastic. Probably the best Sylvester Stallone has ever been. Probably the best that Michael B. Jordan has ever been. And you know, even at its worst, the Rocky movies, Rocky series, spin-offs, whatever, is better than pretty much everything else. So at a rating of 80 out of 100, Creed is my number 14 best movie of 2015.
So I'm gonna move on to my number 13.
Okay.
This movie called Dope.
This
it was
is
dope.
This is one I want. That shit was dope.
That shit was dope.
That's one that I really wanted to see and just didn't get around to.
I could put this higher. I reckon. It could have been in the top 10. I think. Dope. It started off quite funny, and while I admit that it kind of loses some of its humor as it goes on, it transforms more into like a drama. But it's like it's got so much energy to it, and like a perfect marriage of like music and visuals with like rap, and even like they even use like a Korn song. And I'm not a big fan of Korn. I like maybe two Korn songs, and he uses it really well.
Nice.
And it's just it feels so much like a passion project. I didn't really totally know what it was going into it because I saw Dope and I thought it was just a movie about drug dealing. So I was a little less excited, but then it became clear pretty early that it was something a little more special. Not just using dope in a weed sense. It was because it actually literally starts it off with like definition of dope, a couple different, and it's more dope in like a that shit was dope type of thing. Although the characters get themselves into some trouble and whatnot, but it does everything so well, and yeah, I just felt it was so energetic, And it
Cool.
was like tonally just all over the place at times, but yet cohesive at the same time and never boring.
So it was dope, is what you're saying.
That shit was dope.
It was dope. My number 13 best movie of 2015 is a movie that we talked about a little bit earlier called Crimson Peak. This is a movie. It's strange in some aspects. It's a unique masterpiece, and then in some aspects, it's overly convinced of its own importance. And I don't know if that's intentional or it's not intentional. I'm not 100% sure. What really took me about this and why I liked it so much and why it's so high on my list is the way that it is set up, because you got this like straight up gothic Victorian feel and setting to it, and the story portrays itself as basically operatic. Like it's an opera without the singing. And that, for whatever reason, I really grasped onto that, and it really worked for me from an aesthetic perspective. That it was just a genuine surprise that it was presented in this way and that it grabbed me to the point that it did. Now, barring I have to leave, a lot of the performances were quite good. We mentioned Jessica Chastain earlier, who was just off the charts great. Had some really beautiful visual effects juxtaposed against some that probably should have had a little more time in the incubator before they were put out on screen. But I know it was the setting and it was the execution of it that really kind of grabbed it. And based on that, like I could overlook the melodrama because it was melodramatic, especially in the kind of reveal of the relationship between Hiddleston and Chastain, and the metaphor, which we talked about earlier, which I described as strained, and it's probably closer to his definition of just out and lazy. But at a rating of 80 out of 100, Crimson Peak is my number 13 best movie of 2015.
My number 12 is a movie called Helltown, which is an interesting idea because it's like part soap opera and part slasher flick.
Nice.
And let me read the premise.
Okay.
Okay, it comes a special presentation of 3 episodes from their never-before-released primetime horror comedy series Helltown. These episodes are the painstakingly remastered episodes 7, 8, and 9 of Season 2. Seasons 1 and 3 were completely destroyed in a studio fire. The executives suspected arson. Now, this is all fictional. Like, that's the premise. Yeah. That these episodes, all these seasons were, like, lost in a fire. So you're literally just presented with 3 episodes from this soap opera slasher flick.
Nice.
And the acting is intentionally cheesy, but not, like, stupidly so. Like, it's not like they're winking at the camera. Like, there's a lot of conviction. Like, no, we're playing this shit straight. And that's why it works. So when you just watch actors just winking at the camera all the time, it's like, I'm out of it. But Helltown, like, really mixes some interesting genres together. It's shot like a soap opera, but then has slasher flick elements.
Nice.
And it's funny. It's very inspired, and the kind of film that, I'm not saying that only indie filmmakers can make, because that's untrue, because there's lots of talented people working in big studios and well-known, but it's like there's a certain amount of creativity that indie filmmakers are allowed because they have to be creative because they don't got the money.
Right.
And I don't know if a movie like this would have necessarily caught on with like a big studio.
Mm.
This is why you go underground and find some lesser known stuff.
True enough.
Because it's bursting with creativity.
Exactly.
And Helltown was one I stumbled across, and I was like, this was really good.
My number 12 best movie of 2015 is a movie that this guy had just talked about a minute ago. It is Chappie. I did think it was an emotionally gripping story with a really memorable main character, and it is something. It is a story that I think I'll hold on to a little bit longer because I can get past and I know you can too. I can get past the fact that Chappie's a robot, and I think some of the backlash for people is like, how can I get emotionally invested in this when the main character's a robot? And that to me is comes off as dumb.
But it's like, how can you get invested in any character in a movie because they're fictional?
Right. Well, yeah. There you go. Exactly.
Same kind of thing.
To me, it's as idiotic as saying like I can't get emotionally invested with this main character because he's black.
It's obvious that Chappie's a metaphor for a baby. Like that's abundantly
Right.
clear. But part of the reason it's so effective is that it's not just getting involved with that character. It's getting involved with the shitty way that he's treated.
Yes.
Or the good way in terms of the chick. And part of it is that. It's not just that it's a robot. It's that these people are treating this being, whether it's a human or not, really terrible.
Yeah.
And it's a commentary on humans being terrible.
Yeah. It's a commentary on not only on human acceptance of artificial intelligence, but human acceptance of anything that humans perceive to be better than they are. And they do that sort of metaphorically, and they also do it literally, like, very literally, like, Chappie, and I mentioned it when he talked about it, literally has a reject sticker over his forehead. So, I mean, that's very literal. That's punching you in the face with the idea. And, but I think it's done really well. And, like, Neil Blomkamp is, for the most part, pretty on point with this stuff. For the people that couldn't kind of get past the fact that it's a robot, I don't really know what to say to you.
Yeah,
like that's
I don't know how
the
to
point. I don't know why you watched the movie. Like the robot's on the poster, you know. There's a robot.
It's named after the
It's
robot.
named literally after the robot. But at a rating of 80 out of 100, Chappie's my number 12 best movie of 2015.
I mean, even though like it dipped in terms of where it placed on my list, it was like what 14 or something.
Something like that, yeah.
It's still a movie I really adore. I still rated it a 90. That's the thing.
Exactly.
Like I
so
still,
you're up into your 90s.
yeah, I still love it.
Yeah.
My number 11.
Yeah, this is good. This is gonna cap it off for you.
There's a funny movie to cap off a video with. Well, my part of it.
Right.
Entourage.
Nice.
Entourage, like I'm invested in Entourage.
Right.
Because what Entourage was to me, like the show, was junk food. It's shallow.
Speaking of.
Yeah. It's shallow. It's not even necessarily representative of Hollywood lifestyle. Like, I don't like Hollywood lifestyle. I mean, I don't doubt that some parts of it are, but I know they kind of exaggerated a little. Like, but all it is to me is like a bunch of characters that have been friends since they were kids, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Well, two of them are related. And they go and they just do fun things, and they have little drama here and there and stuff, and can't get movies made and all that, but Entourage is just a funny show, and I care about the characters, so when I go into a movie like Entourage, all I wanted was another Entourage episode.
Right.
Like, people were criticizing, like, it's just a long Entourage episode. I'm like, what did you want?
Right, and I see that criticism a lot about movie adaptations of TV shows.
I got Ari Gold being Ari Gold, which is, like, Jeremy Piven is, in that role anyway, is, like, some of the most dazzling shit ever. Because he's, like, a tornado of insults and aggression, and he's so funny. He'd be the worst person in the world to work for.
Yeah.
But as like a character who is apparently actually based on somebody, which scares me. But as a character in, a fictional movie, he's very entertaining. And then like the other guys, like I'm into it. I'm in Entourage. And like I took my little brother who had never seen Entourage at that point. I was like, I you might not like this. But he came over and was like, I really like that. I'm gonna watch the show. And he watched the show and he's like, I really like it.
Nice. No, that's a nice way to cap the video. I like
Entourage, but people didn't like it.
Entourage. And my number 11 best movie of 2015 to end off this list is one that he talked about earlier. It's Ex Machina. Ex Machina, sci-fi drama, as I mentioned, when he talked about it, complete with dance sequences and Jackson Pollock paintings, Alicia Vikander, her real breakout role. It ends exactly the way that it should end. The set pieces are really beautiful. She's a compelling character. The interaction between the main guy character, the coder, and her are excellent, and the way that they kind of juxtapose color with when it's safe and when it's not safe is really interesting. And the whole premise of the movie, like, can this artificial intelligence convince you that it's human? It's just an interesting, really cool sci-fi premise. I like the soundtrack a lot, and it's one of those movies where there's music consistently. Like there's music, like underlying music, like a lower third or whatever, basically throughout the whole movie. It's like there's never a moment in the movie where there's no music. So like on that, and here it really, really, really worked well because it helped to set the atmosphere. It admittedly didn't blow me away. Like, this is one of those movies that probably could have reached 90 to 95 territory for me. It didn't, but it was my number 11 best movie of 2015 at a rating of 80 out of 100, Ex Machina. All right, so that's going to cap off this video. We did our best movies of 2015, numbers 20 to number 11. The next video is the main event, folks, number 10 through number 1. We are pumped. We are ready to roll. Is there going to be tension?
Nah.
Maybe not. See you in a few.